Primer on curve analysis. Important. Please keep sharing our original video 30-minute version as it's our core message and we need to get that out there. Curve analysis is not difficult. In fact, it would never have occurred to me to create such a primer, but it may be that the very fear created around the virus has deflected people from their intuitive understanding of curves and trajectories, and so I have created this video to remind them of what they already know. Some people are paid huge sums for curve analysis, analysing the trajectory of a curve. Others have barely started school. Can you spot the likely curve implied in this picture? How about that? Does that look about right? How about this one? It's plausible and we've all been there, but why is she jumping in anticipation of catching if it's going over her head? Or this one. This mysterious ball is floating over them and they are perhaps reaching for it, but it has nothing to do with them playing catch. Or this one. Well, maybe there's an invisible rope and it's swinging above them, but it doesn't describe a couple of kids playing catch. How about that? Does that look about right? This seems plausible because it connects to the ball, the boy's hands throwing, the girl's hands catching, or vice versa. Is that enough? Can we now know that there is only one reasonable curve or line joining those circles? How about this one? This makes no sense to us because balls do not fly in a straight line, do not change direction sharply. How about that? Does that look about right? This seems plausible because it connects to the ball, the boy's hands throwing, the girl's hands catching, and has a plausible curve. Technically, it's about as plausible as I can conveniently do in PowerPoint, but I'm sure you get the idea. Now we'll drop the image of the children and just focus on the curve. Let's separate the curve into two parts, the part that's happened and the part that's projected. I'm sure you'll see where this is going. The solid line, reversing the earlier direction, is the happened part, the dotted line, the projected part. From what you've seen earlier, can you complete the projected curve? The grey ones make no sense. Two are disconnected and the third bounces back. Okay on a billiard table, but hardly a ball travelling through the air. The red one makes no sense unless it's caught in a Star Trek tractor beam. The green no sense unless somehow the ball suddenly lands on a table. The blue is the only one that seems plausible in our earlier context. Context is critical. If I change the context and say that's a toy car which can go straight ahead, left and right, do those curves seem plausible if we're looking down at the car from above? Certainly. So I suspect that this also seems absurdly trivial, as it frankly should, and would if it wasn't perhaps for the virus. Let's change the context to a virus-like context. On the left we're going to have a day cases counter. It could be visitors to an exhibition or anything, including cases for the virus. On the right is a grand total or cumulative chart. 0 on day 1, 1 on day 2, 2 on day 3, gives a day 3 total of 0 plus 1 plus 2 equals 3. Trivial. By definition, the total on any given day is the previous total plus the new day's cases. The chart is humped. Visitors increase to a peak of 10 by 1 per day, then decrease back to 0 by 1 per day. Notice that even though the cases or visitors per day is a straight pyramid, the cumulative total is a softly curved line. Again, that should look familiar. Now let's try a fundamentally different chart. The daily cases climbs inexorably up in a straight line. So does the grand total, except in a curve. Notice that the curve never flattens because each day's cases get bigger, the curve keeps curling upwards. These are linear scales, but that's not material right now. Just notice that the total keeps going up. Given enough time, it would get to any number you like. This is a fundamental distinction between these two classes of curves for day cases and the resulting classes of grand total curves on the right. Here are 4 climbing lines or curves on the left, and all climb remorselessly on the right. Notice one daily cases curve, blue, rises steeply then flattens but never reduces. It may not climb by much at the end, but it's still going up, and each day around 10 new cases are added. The orange curve takes a while to get going, but boy, look at it go. Does it look familiar? It should. It's the curve you've almost certainly been told describes the virus. Not exactly. The green line is our straight line, 1 more per day, each day, and the red starts slow, races up, then slows down again, settling about 10 new cases per day. Very different curves, but look at the grand total curves on the right. They look remarkably similar for such different curves. That's because the curves on the left have one thing in common. As long as the curves on the left keep going up, no matter in what manner, the curves on the right will keep going up with that characteristic curve. Now we go back to the other class of curves, or humped curves. Again, very different in nature, but they all have several things in common. The first is that the daily cases all go up, then come down. Whether early or late, or in a pyramid straight line or a smooth curve, they all go up and they all come down. Now look at the curves on the right. What do you notice? The most critical thing is that they all end up going horizontal, leveling off instead of climbing without end. Why is that? These hump-style curves go back down to 0 cases per day. In the case of the virus, the number might be a few tens or 100 instead of thousands, but the effect is the same. This is what makes these curves so powerful for projecting the current curves. We don't have to sit back and hope the ever-escalating figures stop eventually. The chart, especially the purple normal distribution style, will be pointing to the eventual figure long before we get there. This gives rise to the importance of curl-over. Predicting where a straight line, or close in the mid part of the curve, or any of the right-hand examples, is difficult. Once you get that distinctive curl to something like horizontal, it's easy. Let's move on to the real world of the virus and go through the possible curves for day-to-day cases. Make a note of the color and shape of the curve you think is the best fit. This is Korea, Republic of Korea, South Korea, whose chart is almost an art form. It's so smooth and perfect. This is the record of daily cases, technically cases per 3-day data interval, equivalent to a left-hand chart. I'm going to go through all 8 left-hand daily example curves. Make a note of the one that seems closest. Here we go. Straight line climbing, curving up, plateau, hill, obviously not formal names, just to give a convenient name to them, early straight hump, pyramid, late straight hump, normal hump. Okay, so there you go. Did you pick a winner? I sure did. Let's go straight to the best matching curve here on Fake It or Make It. I think it's pretty clear why this is the winner. It's absolutely the closest fit to the curve on the left, wouldn't you agree? On social media, there's no doubt whatsoever. It's a big deal. Yep, that's the famous exponential curve that everyone's been telling everyone about. The one that so readily demonstrates how quickly 80% of the UK will be infected with the virus. In fact, let me tell you how powerful it is. If cases doubled from 1 case on day 0, then on day 26, less than 4 weeks, it would have infected every Briton in the UK. This is a hypothetical scenario warning. At a 10.3% death rate, which is what we're faced with at the moment, that would be 6.8 million dead inside 4 weeks. No wonder the government, thank God, was so determined to get us safely into lockdown. It's a hypothetical scenario warning. There's only one problem. It's fake news. It's a nonsense alert. Now, chillax. That was a totally constructed false alarm. But here's the worrying thing. Do you know or can you spot the multiple things that made it fake news? I'm going to hazard a guess that you didn't, or at least that most of the UK population would see that figure of 6.8 million and run for the hills and scream for lockdown. They certainly went into lockdown meekly with the paltry figure of 530,000. How on earth would they have reacted to 6.8 million, and why is it utterly fake? Firstly, did you actually choose the middle chart, exponential, or did you choose the chart on the right, normal? It's a no-brainer that the chart on the right looks a lot more like the chart on the left, actual career. It's also the chart officially sanctioned by the Imperial College COVID-19 response team, complete with 510,000 UK deaths, 2.2 million US, in an unmitigated, free, no lockdown society. So every time you have seen the word exponential, you have received a devastatingly misleading chart that even the ICCRT don't dare to publish. That's flaw number 1. Did you spot flaw number 2? I said 26 days to infect the entire UK. Is it even possible to infect the entire UK? Even disregarding that isolated villages and islands will likely not be reached, the worst infection percentage in the world is not in a country, but on a ship. On the Diamond Princess, a closed, crowded, compact space with every human tested in the best conditions a virus could hope for, it only managed to infect 705 out of 4,061 is 17%, the 26 March figure. I said 100% infected, and with all due respect, you probably didn't even question that, just like the public didn't question the 53 million infected, 530,000 deaths news release. I cited a figure 5.76 times worse than the worst infection rate in the world, and did you notice? If you did, congratulations, sincerely. But that's a ship. An infected isn't at risk. To be at risk of dying, you have to have symptoms. 392 of the 705, more than half, were asymptomatic. They had no idea that they had it. So the real gosh I have the virus cases were 705 minus 392 divided by 461 at 7.7%. At 100%, and with the public hearing diseased with symptoms, I've now exaggerated the risk. 1 divided by 7.7% equals 13 times. So now we're down to only 523,000 deaths, and that's remarkably close to the 530,000, 510,000 comments that sent us into lockdown. But that's a coincidence maybe, and it's still fake news. That was flaw number 2. The worst infection rate in the world was the Diamond Princess at 17%, with actual symptomatic cases at 7.7%. But what about the real world, land-based? China listed 34 regions when it was reporting regions before it became pointless because the crisis was over. Hubei was worst hit by a factor of 50 to 100 times versus the next regions. It experienced 96% of China deaths. It was literally the only candidate in the real world for a worst-case scenario, and 80 to 100,000 Hubei residents died in the first quarter. COVID-19 deaths? 3,085 by the time China stopped reporting, 15th March, because the entire of China cases were down to minuscule levels, 3,085 out of 80 to 100,000. In the worst hit province in China, the only candidate for worst case scenario, ordinary life was 30 times more likely to kill you. Did the UK government forget to mention that? No matter. 67,794 confirmed cases out of 59.17 million is a rate of 0.115% actual risk of noticeable infection, confirmed cases. And the nightmare and disaster of testing, an entirely pointless exercise that confuses the situation still further and adds to the distraction and fear, more testing kits. We'll discuss later. So instead of the entire country being infected, public reads at risk of dying, we have 0.115% or 75,619. I want you to sear that number into your brain. What did the government warn the UK of? 80%, 81% in the report, infected. 53 million people infected, 1% deaths, 530,000 deaths, 510,000 in the report. If we didn't act, real, at-risk, diagnosed, confirmed cases, we'll use the Diamond Princess figure of 707 tested infected, 392 asymptomatic, equals 313 out of 4061 cases, or 44% of the headline infected. The real and only valid estimate by transposition of Hubei data to the UK, 0.115% times 66 million equals 75,619. 23 million fake news threat versus 75,000 actual. And deaths, the only place in the world as a nation, as a UK-sized nation, actually a province, that had finished the virus and been the worst case, had 3,085 deaths in 59 million people. Schoolchild arithmetic. UK estimate of deaths is 66 over 59.17 times 3085 equals 3451. Government threat, 530,000, 510,000 in the report. Against the only place in the world to get accurate data, and the charts demonstrate that it was accurate, the UK government exaggerated. 530,000 divided by 3085 equals 171 times. Would you have willingly gone into lockdown for 3,451 deaths, or about 2 days normal deaths in the UK? It would have been an act of insanity to do so. Did the UK go meekly into lockdown when presented with 530,000 deaths, 510,000 deaths, nearly a full year's deaths extra, though by definition many would be overlapped? Of course we did. And the government reaction? As soon as we were safely in lockdown, the figure was revised to 5,700, not so far from 3,451, but only if we obeyed the rules. It was never, in any real-world scenario, going to cost us more than a few thousand deaths. Even the death stuffing going on at present isn't likely to take it over 13,000, 8 days or so normal. And the importance of the charts, why we're here, is precisely because it shows we were already headed to nominal, modest deaths, blatantly, demonstrably, visibly, even as we locked down. We've seen the fake exponential meme. We've exposed the absurd exaggeration against the only real-world worst-case scenario that had any validity. We'll observe one more absurd exaggeration before we move on, and that is the 80% infection rate, when the Diamond Princess at 17% was itself a massive and unrealistic risk for real land infection. For those old enough to remember WMD, it is a charade so grotesque that it is actually insulting that they have zero regard for the intelligence of the people, and sadly, they're right. Not one reporter mathematician, analyst, city, finance, or scientist anywhere in the UK stood up to say, hang on a minute, I've studied Hubei and this is nonsense. Not one. And we now have South Korea. Did they lie? 10,384 cases, 200 deaths as of 8th April, and it is over. Again, the charts. Or did a non-communist country lie as well? Pro rata times 66 divided by 51.26, that would be 13,370 cases. 258 deaths for the UK. We're on 55,000 cases and 6,000 deaths. Did it even occur to someone to ask what they were doing right? Or are they lying? Those figures are so risible that it isn't even worth taking them into account. That's about 4 hours deaths. It's a confirmed case risk of 0.02%, 5 times better than the lying Chinese. Where is the outrage that South Korea has lied? As I and all our viewers sit and watch every 3 days the contrast between the UK lies and the chart reality. And where, in this worst crisis engulfing the world, are the investigative reporters who haven't even noticed that we're not even a third world nation by comparison to Far East figures? But that's all arithmetic, and darling public gave up on arithmetic and thinking sometime in the Dark Ages. So it seems also did reporters and analysts. So let's make it easy. Let's get a finger to point at the number of actual cases we are likely to have and have been likely to have since before lockdown. If the glowing hand of God writ a number large on Westminster Abbey, it could not be more visible or easier to see, and yet no one, it seems, has bothered to look. Except us, and so we continue. There is your distribution, not exponential. Yet another red herring and lie. Normal, except we can still do better. The purple is normal, the orange log normal. Do not sweat the difference. They're both humped on the left. They both have that sweeping hillside look on the right. The technical utility of log normal is that it is theoretically possible to have negative numbers with a normal distribution, and generally the number of cases cannot be negative, nor stock prices. Log normal is for positive data only. The log of the number is normal or normally distributed. Height of children at a certain age, or adults, or snowflake dating habits, or speeding, it's all normal. Now look at Korea, South Korea, whose World Health Organization chart is a thing of elegant beauty. Here is their daily cases chart against a log normal curve. A supermodel could not look more beautiful nor have a more powerful message. It says that perfection is possible, a sublime experience of the virus at a fraction of our cost. And where is the announcement of the UK Cabinet flying to South Korea to take advice on their now completed experience? Let us show you how simple it is to point the finger, because South Korea shows us that the charts and their curves are not coincidence. They are ICCRT approved, except in the creation of their fraudulent document, the chart on page 7 is a normal, not log normal distribution. The deaths per day are absurd, by the way, but why not log normal? In the same way that the government and media publish linear scales on their graphs, showing exponential growth or whatever nonsense they're peddling, it is the mark of an amateur. It is like taking a genuine copy of the Gutenberg Bible and altering it with Tipp-Ex. It is amateurish as well as grotesque. But no matter. If these are the daily cases and we can see that a normal or log normal curve is a near perfect fit and life's variance barely detracts from that, then what of the grand total curves? By now, you should appreciate why we belabored the early part of this presentation. The right-hand chart is not just a chart. It is characteristic of all humped charts. While the media lauds the US for its specious victory in finally being worst hit, it is not, more fake news. The elegant and sublime shape of these grand total charts reveal the lies. This is the sort of question school children do. I I don't know the age, but I don't know, maybe 12 or 8. Do please do me the honour of reading off where the orange curve has levelled off and where the mauve curve has levelled off. Would you do that for me? If you're having difficulty, I've placed a couple of lines with arrows to point to the numbers you need. If you think perhaps I am being rude, then consider how it feels to sit every day with the finger pointing at the real numbers while 400 million people absorb yet more lies. And that is only the people of the UK in lockdown, USA recipients of the ICCRT report, and Canada, following almost in lockstep with the USA. So please read those numbers. When you can see that they point to 70 and 75, we will continue. Pause until you do. Further, these are the characteristic cumulative charts, the grand totals, the how many cases so far. If you've seen our original presentation, which we still recommend for all new viewers, or you've been following the chart update videos, a new update every 3 days, this video should tie in naturally with the charts that are so familiar now. Yes, that's where we're going in the next, and I hope concluding video for curve analysis. For now, let me put this in context. If you're new to the Peerless Reads information, and this is perhaps your first such experience of our work, thank you sincerely for taking the time to watch. Whether critical, confused, fan or agnostic, it's all about data. The government's own data showing that yet again it has lied to the public, and this time with devastating results. We gave up democracy and freedom for a press conference. If I hadn't witnessed it by living it here and now, I would never have believed it possible. The good news is every absurd and alarming announcement and measure now implemented is to be celebrated as evidence that they are determined to milk their initial success for all it's worth. As Herr Gates, of 10 more weeks of lockdown fame and strong isolation measures, should perhaps have figured out it's not that difficult, and as Adolf Hitler and Napoleon discovered going into Russia, a fraction of the rest of the world, Mother Earth is too big to be conquered. We, the people, are too numerous to be conquered. We can only be conquered by surrendering meekly, and what an astounding victory for the elite. It must look to them like Hitler or Napoleon before Moscow. Their mighty armies of government officials backed by the airtime force are rampaging unchecked with worthwhile resistance. Isolated pockets, individuals here and there, voices on the temporarily available internet. Save us, Obi-Wan Vikovsky. I can't even say that. Save us, Obi-Wan Vikovsky. You're our only hope. I wonder if he means old Knut Vikovsky. He even looks the part. No, I'm not deluded enough to see myself as Luke. I'm a naive young man, please. Nor do I self-identify as Leia. No, I'll be entirely happy, if I may, to imagine myself as the rebel scientist briefing the pilots before they go off to destroy the Death's Lie. We have identified and advertised the flaws in the apparently overwhelming might of the Death's Lie. Their primary weapon, the lockdown, is devastating to free people everywhere. It has already been fired at Planet UK, and so we sit confined to our homes. Trust the facts, Luke. So many, sadly, have been seduced by the dark side of the facts, the farce. We have rehearsed this so many times. Star Wars, The Matrix, Battle of Britain, The Longest Day, Downfall. I look forward to the virus version of that Facebook meme video. For God's sake, celebrate! Every alarming piece, every action is evidence that we'll need for the Virusberg trials. And no Operation Paperclip to spare the leading Virazzis. It's over, just like curlover shows the end of the crisis but not the end of the contagion on our charts. They are stalled. I received an email this morning highlighting a first, safe, legal protest march and gathering. Bravo! Everyone who speaks in favour of lockdown, of ending democracy for your safety, of chipping, of mandatory vaccines, of whatever they choose to announce, announces their willful participation. Remember them and do not forgive. No mistakes were made. Someone ordered Imperial College to create a plausible report with an absurd lie designed to generate fear, and it worked. Someone instructed Boris Johnson to deliver that absurd news to the British public. And please, don't imagine Boris woke up one day and said, "I know, wouldn't it be fun to scare people today?" My greatest fear was never the virus. That was never even a slight fear, but that's just me. No, my greatest fear was that after lockdown the UK government would claim that it saved us, hence my video, and so they win. That no longer concerns me. Their own data condemns them. No, my greatest fear now is that we the sheeple, to have a more quiet life, do accept the government's apology and assurance that it can't possibly happen again. And here's my fear transported forward a bare few months from now. 4th March 1789. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. 4th August 2020. We, the people of the United States, in order to enjoy a quiet life, accept unreservedly the apology from Vice President, Acting President. The mistakes were made, and we trust that with proper oversight, any such event cannot possibly happen again. 1789, presumably, a republic, if you can keep it. Benjamin Franklin. 2020, you didn't. Andrew Mather. You know the drill, or if you're new to Peerless Reads, see one of our earlier videos and it's sign off. To borrow from Spock, tweaked a little, as my usual sign off would be repetitive at this point, I will merely say, wake up. Or, red pill, blue pill. We will take up from where we left off in the chart analysis in a separate video. You're already equipped to follow and I hope enjoy one of our chart updates published every 3 days. Thank you for listening or watching. Feel free to get in touch, Andrew@peerlessreads.com or Andrew@amather.com. Either should get to me.